In an unexpected, deeply emotional moment, Hollywood legend Samuel L. Jackson was brought to tears live on TV after reading a personal letter from African leader Ibrahim Traoré. What was in that letter? Why did it hit him so hard? This unforgettable segment has taken the internet by storm. Watch the powerful moment unfold, raw, real, and unforgettable. It was just another Wednesday morning in Los Angeles. Samuel L. Jackson was preparing for a guest appearance on a talk show. As usual, he had his coffee, his notes, and his signature calm. But something felt different today. Just before he was called on stage, a quiet assistant handed him an envelope. "This came for you." International delivery marked urgent. The handwriting was foreign, elegant, strong. He raised a brow. It was from Burkina Faso. He opened it slowly. Inside was a neatly folded letter, unofficial paper, signed in blue ink. The name at the bottom read, Ibrahim Traoré. Samuel paused. His heart skipped. He didn't know the president personally. Why would he write him? As he glanced at the first line, something shifted. His hands trembled. He whispered under his breath, "No, no way." And then the producer called, "We're live in 60. Samuel slipped the letter into his coat, stood up, and walked onto that stage, not knowing that in a few minutes he would break down in front of the world. The show opened with laughter, clapping, and Samuel's usual sharp wit. He spoke about his latest film, his love for jazz, and his journey from the theater stage to Hollywood legend. But his eyes kept drifting toward the envelope in his jacket. Finally, the host teased, "Sam, I heard you got a letter that almost made you skip the show today, from a president." The crowd chuckled. Samuel gave a tight smile. "Yeah, I did," he said softly, pulling it out. "From a man named Ibrahim Traoré, president of Burkina Faso. I don't know why, but something in this hit me hard." He opened the letter live. Silence settled in. Samuel began to read the words aloud, at first steady, then his voice cracked. His hands shook slightly. The room shifted from amused to stunned. "I never knew my father," Samuel read. "But your strength, your fire, your fight for black dignity across the screen has made young men like me believe in our own voice." Tears welled in his eyes. He looked down, took a breath, and the crowd stopped breathing. The cameras didn't cut. They zoomed in as Samuel's lips quivered. He wrote that watching me helped him hold on to his identity when everything was trying to erase it. A deep silence hung in the room, not a single cough, not even the sound of a chair creaking. Viewers at home leaned in, their phones forgotten, their popcorn untouched. The letter continued, "You never knew the burden you carried for us, but every time you refused to be silent, you spoke for all of Africa's lost sons." Samuel wiped his eyes but didn't look away. This ain't a letter. It's a mirror. It's a thank you note from a brother I didn't know I had. The host, normally quick with jokes, stayed quiet. The studio audience began tearing up. People started reaching for tissues. Even the cameraman's hands were shaking. And in that moment, one single letter turned a Hollywood icon into a human bridge between continents. But no one could have guessed what that letter would lead to in just a matter of days. Backstage after the show, Samuel sat in his dressing room, letter in hand, head bowed. He reread a specific line over and over. "There was a time I felt invisible, like I didn't matter in this world. Your voice made me feel seen." It wasn't just a fan letter. It was a story. Traoré wrote about being a boy growing up under French colonial influence, where African history was erased from classrooms and heroes were never black. "They taught me that my skin was a mistake," the letter said, "but watching your films taught me to fight that lie." Samuel wiped a tear and whispered, "This ain't about me. This is about something bigger." His publicist entered the room, stunned. "Samuel, your reading just went viral. It's all over the internet. People are crying. Celebrities are reposting. Even CNN is running it on repeat." But Samuel didn't care about the fame this time. All he could think about was the young boy who once felt voiceless and the man who now leads a nation. That night, Samuel couldn't sleep. He tossed in bed, the letter on his nightstand. Something inside him wouldn't let go. At 2:14 a.m. he got up, walked into the kitchen, and made a call he never thought he'd make. He called the embassy of Burkina Faso. "Can I speak to the president?" he asked. The woman on the line laughed gently. "That's not exactly how it works, sir." But 3 hours later his phone rang. "Mr. Jackson, this is President Ibrahim Traoré." I didn't expect a reply. The voice was calm, warm, and grounded. "You didn't just write to me," Samuel said. "You cracked open a door to something I've buried for years." There was silence, then Traoré spoke. "We all carry wounds, brother. Mine came from erasure. Yours, I felt it between your words on screen. That's why I wrote you." The two men talked for 42 minutes, 2 lives, 2 continents, but one shared pain and one rising fire to turn that pain into healing. After their call, Samuel sat in the dark, staring out his window. His mind drifted back to his childhood in Chattanooga, Tennessee. He remembered the insults, the broken bottles thrown at him, his mother shielding him with trembling arms. He remembered watching Malcolm X speeches in secret, feeling like his anger was too dangerous to speak aloud. And now, decades later, a president told him that anger saved someone. "You turned fury into art," Traoré had said, "and that art gave me the permission to lead." Samuel felt his heart crack, not from sadness but from an ache he never knew needed healing. For the first time in years he cried, not in a movie scene, not on stage, but alone, raw, real. By morning, Samuel made a decision. This story wouldn't end with one letter. It had to be told, not as gossip, not as a headline, but as truth passed from one black man to another. And soon, the world would see what happened when truth finally found its voice on both sides of the ocean. By morning, clips from the show had flooded social media. The moment Samuel's voice cracked, the close-up of his tear-filled eyes, the silence that followed, it was everywhere. Twitter lit up, Samuel L. Jackson crying over a letter from an African president. "I'm in tears. This is more than TV. This is soul speaking to soul." Young black creators posted reaction videos. Grandmothers in Ghana and teenagers in Atlanta reposted the segment. Everyone was asking the same question: what was in that letter? Samuel, overwhelmed, called his agent and said, "Tell the network I want to read the rest live. No script. Just me and the letter." The agent hesitated. "Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure," Samuel replied. "The world needs to hear the whole thing." But across the world, in a small, sunlit room in Ouagadougou, Traoré sat alone, wondering if he had shared too much. Before the second reading aired, Samuel received a private message from Traoré: "Be kind with my truth, brother. It still trembles inside me." Samuel felt the weight of that line. The second half of the letter dug deeper, not into politics but into pain. Traoré wrote about the night his best friend, Madou, disappeared during a student protest in Burkina Faso, about watching soldiers drag young boys like animals, about the screams that still haunted his dreams. He wrote, "That was the day I realized silence is a form of violence. So I chose to speak even if it costs me everything." Samuel read the line out loud during rehearsal. The room went still. Even the cameraman had tears in his eyes. As the network prepared the live segment, Samuel whispered, "This ain't about Africa. It's about all of us." Traoré's truth was becoming a mirror the world could no longer avoid. The night of the second broadcast, people gathered in bars, in homes, even outside on big screens in places like Lagos, Detroit, and Accra. Samuel sat alone under a spotlight. The audience was quiet, waiting. He began, "Dear Samuel, I never knew your name until I saw A Time to Kill. I didn't understand your pain until I saw your tears. And I didn't see myself until you stood there and refused to be small." He paused, looked up, then continued, "We carry so much as black men, but no one teaches us how to grieve. Your rage taught me to lead with love. Your fire taught me to rise." Tears streamed down Samuel's face as he finished. "If I have led my people with courage, it is because someone like you once dared to scream through silence." The room broke into silence, not applause, silence. The kind of silence that only happens when truth touches the human soul. And in that moment, the world began to understand. This wasn't just a letter. It was history whispering its way back into the hearts of the forgotten. The day after the broadcast, Samuel's phone rang again. It was an unknown number. He almost ignored it, but something made him answer. "I didn't expect you to read the whole thing," said a calm, humble voice. Was Traoré. I couldn't stop, Samuel replied. You didn't just write a letter. You wrote a mirror. There was a silence between them, not awkward, just real. I wrote that letter because I made a promise, Traoré said, to the boy I used to be, to Madhu, to all the voices the world never hears. Samuel clenched the phone tighter. You've been through hell, haven't you? Traoré chuckled lightly. Hell is when the world watches you suffer and stays silent. And then he added softly, but maybe heaven is when someone finally hears you. That night, Samuel wrote something of his own, not a speech, a reply. He called his producer. Next episode, I read my letter. As millions tuned in once again, Samuel stood in the studio. No fancy lighting, no chair, just him and a letter folded in his palm. He began, Dear President Traoré, I've played warriors. I've played kings. I've shouted lines that echoed in movie halls. But none of those roles prepared me to read your pain. He paused, then looked into the camera. You didn't write to impress the world. You wrote because it hurt too much not to. And I felt every word. I felt Madhu's cry. I felt your silence. And I felt the fire it lit in you. As his voice trembled, he whispered, I wish I had known about you earlier. I wish the world had. And then he ended, You are not just a leader. You are a testimony. And I see you, my brother. I see you. For a full minute, the entire studio was silent again. Viewers around the world sat in stunned stillness. It wasn't entertainment. It was healing. A week earlier, during a private visit to a refugee camp near Fata Ngurma, Traoré had been filmed hugging a crying boy who had just lost his parents. The boy had asked, Are you the president? Traoré replied, No, today I'm just someone who listens. That clip was never supposed to go public, but someone leaked it. Now it played right after Samuel's letter. No sound, just a video of a president kneeling in the dirt, wiping a child's tears with his own hands. Twitter broke. Instagram flooded with reactions. And in cities from Dar to DC, people whispered things they hadn't said before. This is the kind of man the world needs. This is what leadership should look like. We never heard his story. Why? But now, thanks to a letter and a tear, they were listening. And for the first time, the name Ibrahim Traoré wasn't just trending, it was being remembered. That night, Samuel sat in silence, holding the printed letter again. He couldn't shake one sentence from his mind. She died holding my hand, not asking for help, but asking me to remember. Attached to the letter was a photo, blurry, black and white. A woman lying on a mat, eyes closed, her face tired but peaceful. On the back, Ibrahim had written, My mother, Fatou Traoré. She believed dignity was more powerful than gold. Samuel showed the photo on his show. The audience grew still. Then he shared what the world didn't know. Traoré's mother died in a hospital that had no light. She gave up her treatment because there wasn't enough for everyone. She chose to let a child live instead. Suddenly, people weren't just crying, they were angry, moved, awake. The next day, Samuel's phone lit up with calls from celebrities, politicians, even African leaders. A famous director said, This story, this is the movie we should be making. A senator whispered, Why wasn't I told any of this before? But the most surprising call came from a nurse in Burkina Faso. I was there the night Fatou passed, she said. She smiled and told me, My son will not cry for me. He will rise for many. That voice cracked on the line. Samuel couldn't reply. He was sobbing. That night, hashtags like #WeSeeYou and #TraorTruth started trending worldwide. Even children were drawing pictures of Traoré and his mother. The world wasn't just watching anymore, they were feeling it. On the fifth day, just before going live again, Samuel received a surprise video message from Traoré himself. He sat alone in his dressing room, hit play, and the young president appeared on screen, looking straight into the lens. Brother Samuel, thank you. I never imagined a man from Hollywood would carry my mother's memory like his own. Then Traoré paused, eyes moist. Do you know what broke me most as a child? It wasn't hunger. It wasn't war. It was watching people walk past our pain like we were invisible. He leaned closer. But now the world sees us. The video ended, and for the first time in his career, Samuel Jackson canceled his script. He walked out on set, looked into the camera, and said 3 words, "We see you." The screen faded to black. The internet exploded. That evening, a special live show aired, titled The Letter That Shook the World. But just before cameras rolled, Samuel received another envelope, hand-delivered by a Burkina Faso youth who had flown in. Inside were 3 letters written by orphans from a village in Burkina Faso. One had been signed with a fingerprint and a tiny drawing of a mango tree. "Mr. Jackson, we saw your tears. We cry too, but we don't cry because we are weak. We cry because someone saw us." The second read, "Please tell your country our lives are not too small to matter." And the third, "We are the seeds Fatou Traoré planted. Tell the world we are growing." Samuel walked on stage that night, held up the letters and said, "These children wrote the real script tonight." He never read the teleprompter again. By the 6th day, something unimaginable happened. Presidents, artists, journalists, schoolchildren, they all joined what became known as the Fatou movement. Not a political campaign, not a charity, just truth spoken gently but heard loudly. Videos flooded the internet of people reading the letter aloud in schools, churches, mosques, and homes. A mother in South Korea cried, holding her daughter. A soldier in Ukraine whispered the words in a trench. Samuel posted a photo of the original letter on Instagram with the caption, "The most powerful lines I've ever read weren't from a script, but from the soul of a nation." And across continents, people whispered a single phrase, "I see you, Ibrahim. I see you, Fatou. And most importantly, I see me in you." The final show of the week wasn't flashy. It was silent for the first 2 minutes, just clips of children in Burkina Faso smiling, a woman cooking beside a clay stove, a nurse walking a dirt path with a flashlight. Then Samuel appeared, no lights, no makeup, just him. He opened his mouth and tears came again. Fatou died with dignity. Ibrahim rose with purpose. And we were changed because of it. We tell stories in Hollywood, but this was real. He ended the show with a final message from Ibrahim Traoré, recorded at sunrise. "To those who feel unseen, unheard, unloved, I was you. And still I lead today, not to be remembered, but to remind the world that Africa is not a victim. We are the voice." Fade to black. Then a message on screen.